So, as I always do when I first begin my presentations, I want to ask you, how are you breathing? I don't hear any. The purpose that I ask that question is that the older I get, the more mature I get, the more I realize that how important learning how to be present in the moment is, because that's where life, the gift of life, is waiting for us to show up and embrace it. And what I've learned for myself, matter of fact, so much that I had it tattooed on my arm, is the importance of breathing. And that our breath, consciously taken, is like a tether that anchors us in the present moment. I just had that done about a month or two ago, and it's a Sanskrit symbol for the word breathe. And so when I go a little unconscious and get caught up in the stuff on the surface of life, I'm reminded to stop, breathe, and be. So I invite you to just take a deep breath this morning, right here, right now, and intentional. Breathe deeper than you normally might, and hold that breath just for 1 second. And as you release it, think about what a gift it is, and how often we take it for granted. And just to be conscious of that breath, to realize it was the first thing when you got to the planet and the last thing you do when you leave. That breath is what anchors you to the moment, which is the gift of life, which is what I want to talk to you about this morning. My understanding is you have a theme sort of going for the month on miracles. Is that correct? Did I hear that right? I love the concept of miracles because it takes us outside of the realm of our normal thinking mind, and it asks us to open to the possibilities that there's something beyond what we can see, think, and touch that is within our grasp, if we will open our minds to it, where infinite potential lies. I've shared this, I think I've shared this before sometime in the past. In the Vedas, in the Ayurvedic teachings, there's a teaching called the 3 miracles. And I share this with you because it really kind of opens the gate to what I want to share with you this morning. The 3 miracles from the Eastern philosophy are very simple, and they're all linked to self-inquiry that bring you back to the awareness of the gift. Okay. The first miracle is that anything exists. When was the last time you just sat outside and looked up at the stars or the sky and just thought, what a miracle, all this is, the universe is here and it exists. We don't often just stop and think about how amazing that is, or think about how it all began and where it's going. And the second miracle is that living things exist. Living things exist, like trees and plants and birds and puppy dogs and things that have life force moving through them. And that life force is always, if it could speak, it would be say, I have to be more tomorrow than I was yesterday. It's the Holmes referred to it as that creative divine urge pushing out through all living things. And the third miracle, which is really what brings it full circle back to what I want to talk to you about, is the miracle that living things exist that are aware that they exist. Living things exist that know they exist. And this is where self-awareness comes in, and that is the most, other than the gift of life itself, the most amazing miracle is that we have the ability to be conscious and aware that we exist, which makes us co-creators with our Creator, our lives. When we are aware that we exist, it changes everything. Think of this. The fact that you can think a thought and stand outside of the thought and watch it go by and look at it is amazing, isn't it? That's a profound thing. And the moment you become conscious that you can do that, you become co-partner with the creative process, and you begin to be able to realize that your thoughts, when they're not serving you, can begin to be redirected in a way, challenged and redirected in a way that do serve you, but you have to be aware of them first, correct? So this is the power of the 3 miracles, and the I'm going to share a story with you. The first of the aspect of the miracles that I want to talk to you about this morning is, in the Course in Miracles. Any Course in Miracles students in here? What is the definition of a miracle? A miracle, in the Course in Miracles, it says, is nothing more or less than a shift in perception. What happens the minute that we shift our perception of what is? That means we see it through no eye. Well, here's this is the definition I got this morning offline. Okay, I really want to be fresh with it. What is perception? Perception is the way you think about or understand someone or something. It is also what you understand or interpret from your 5 senses: touch, sight, sound, smell, and taste. However, your perception is colored by your past experiences, feelings, and thoughts. That's perception, okay? So when the Course in Miracles says that the miracle is having a shift in perception, how does that relate to how you see life? It changes how everything around you changes your interpretation of what is. Is that correct? If you're coming from a spiritual perspective, let's clarify the difference between perception and perspective. Okay, what is perspective? Perspective, and this is right off the line dictionary. The perspective is an angle or direction in which a person looks at an object. In simple words, it's our point of view. Now that changes. That's different than perception. Okay, here's perspective. I see everybody in this room right now from one perspective. Oh, I changed my perspective, which then allows me to change my perception of what I see. Okay? So they go hand in hand. Our perception and our perspective work together. You could think that of our perspective or our perception as how we see the world through the eyes of the divine, and our perception gives us the awareness of what we're looking at. I got a story for you that really sets this up. Keep in mind that the miracle of changing your perception will change your life. Here's a great example of it. And there's this story is right out of my book. Which one is it? The Art of Being. Okay, and it's all metaphor. I love metaphor. You all get what metaphor is, right? You have to look for the meaning behind the story. And I'm going to read this story to you and stop as I go through it and kind of illustrate the points I'm trying to make here. There was once a large group of travelers who were seeking to enhance their view of the country in which they lived. They wished to know all of it more fully, and the distant mountains called to them silently, promising them a view that would change their lives forever. Now, what's the metaphor of a mountain? Higher consciousness, yeah? So higher consciousness is calling, right? They set out with great excitement down the 4-lane freeway in their comfortable motorhomes heading towards the mountains. As they reached the foothills, the freeway ended and turned into a dirt road, which they followed until it became so narrow that their big, comfortable motorhomes could go no further, so they set up camp. Yet there were those who wanted to go higher, knowing the view would be better and better, and so the reward as well, so they set out in their 4-wheel drive SUVs. Soon enough, they too could go no further, since the path to the top became even more and more steep and narrow. What's that metaphor? The path becoming more and more steep and narrow. It ain't easy. Thank you. And it gets harder, doesn't it? Okay? But at least they can look back and see their friends below in the valley. So although the view wasn't that great, they were content with it, and they set up camp at that level. Then those few who had trail bikes, had yearned for that greater view, rode to the path until it got so narrow and steep that they too could go no further. And they shouted and waved down to their friends below in the valley, and they settled for the limited view, which was nice. But there was one among them who wouldn't settle for a limited view of life, of the valley. Finally, one last traveler knew that he could just hike. If he could just hike that narrow path and eventually climb the rocks, that last mile, his view would be unparalleled and magnificent, and so too his reward. As he reached the top of the mountain and surveyed the entire country below, he felt sad for his friends who, by their own limited efforts, had settled for less and would never know the awesome view he had attained through his persistence and commitment. Then a deep inner peace swept through him that he had never known before, and of course, instantly his life was transformed and he lived happily ever after. Okay, point. It's true that the spiritual path does grow more and more narrow the further we move up the mountain of an evolved consciousness. Can I get a witness for that? The motorhome consciousness is very convenient, Practicing spirituality at the level of the motorhome consciousness is not a discipline, it's a matter of convenience. That's my first point that I want to make to you guys. It's real easy to practice spirituality at the motorhome consciousness, but the perception, how we perceive life, is not all that enhanced, yeah? And the further that we go up the mountain, the more clearly we see the valley, the life itself, yeah? And the metaphor of the journey up the hill, the mountain being a spiritual practice, spiritual journey, do you get the metaphor that the higher you go, the more challenging it is, but also the greater the reward that you see? Ultimately, seeing the full spectrum of life that the others could not see because they did not follow the same disciplines. So I guess my first question to you is, how's things going as far as your spiritual practices and your ability to see the results of it in your life? Is there areas in your life that are a little less comfortable than other areas? Is it possible that if you were to enhance your commitment to the journey, I'm talking about the spiritual journey, that would deepen yourself to seeing life and what is in your life in this moment through different eyes? Shake your head like this. Yes, it would, wouldn't it? So the first point that I want to make to you with that story is that life is a journey. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And when we spiritually awaken, and we become grounded in being tethered to the present moment, which is where life is waiting for us to show up, what happens is that we experience it through new eyes. Well, in other words, when you change your perception, things out there don't necessarily have to change. But how you see them changes because you're at an elevated perception. Your perspective changes when you have a different perception. Okay? Everywhere I look, I see the face of God. Two of you got it. Good. Everywhere I look, I see the face of God. Turn to your neighbor and say that. Easier said than done? Hey, if it was that easy, we'd all be walking on sunshine and blue skies and green lights, and life would be a very pleasant place to be, wouldn't it? But it requires commitment. It requires commitment. There's another story I want to share with you. It's in the book, and I'm going to try to paraphrase it so I don't have to read it all. Once there was a traveler coming into a city, and as he's entering the city, there's a wise man sitting at the city gates. And the traveler coming from a distant city stops and asks the wise man, "My friend, can you please tell me what are the people in this city like? What's the quality of their lifestyle? Are they kind? How do they treat people? How's this city flesh out in the human's experience?" And the wise man said, "Well, first off, tell me about the city you just came from. What did you find there?" And of course, the traveler says, "Well, they were really a wretched bunch. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. They were selfish and unkind and cruel, and it was not a pleasant place to be. So I shook the dust off my sandals and left there as quickly as I could." And the wise man said, "I see. Well, my suggestion is you may just want to bypass this city because you're going to find the very same kind of people there. Soon enough, a second traveler comes from the same other city, approaches the wise man and says, "Can you tell me about the people who live in this city? What are they like? What can I expect in this city?" And the wise man again said, "Well, first tell me about the city from which you came." Oh, it was the most wonderful bunch of people there. They were generous and kind and compassionate, spiritually anchored. They just made my life so much better. Of course, you know the end of the story. The wise man says, "Well, then enter this city with a glad heart, my friend, because you're going to find the same kind of people here. My consciousness goes before me to announce my coming." What we expect to see, somehow consciousness helps create that reality. Yeah? And I guess the point of this is that the miracle of expectation couples with the miracle of perception. You get it? And the miracle of expectation activates the law of attraction. How could two people coming from the exact same city have two such different experiences of the same city, the same people? Consciousness rules. Consciousness affects perception. Law of attraction works with perception. What I see is what I get. Of course, that's backed by our beliefs, yeah? Easy enough said? How are you breathing? Because it gets better. Just for a minute, consider the gift that God, the universe, has plopped in your lap today. Look at your hands. Do this. Do they work? What a gift. When's the last time you gave thanks for a non-toothache? Little things like that, you know. I was talking to somebody yesterday who was, I can't remember where it was. The person had real bad foot problems. Oh, our neighbor had sprained her ankle really badly. And the subject came up of how it really curtailed her activities, and she never really appreciated her feet until it wasn't working right. See, the miracle, the shift in perception, allows you to see what is through new eyes. Of course, that activates gratitude as well, doesn't it? Yeah, it activates gratitude as well. So, where in your life today could you activate a shift in perception? Go ahead, just think about that for yourself. What's going on in your life today, where if you could choose to have a different experience of it, what would it be? Just think about that to yourself. Now, having a shift in perception may not change the thing or the condition, but it will change one thing, and what is that? How you see it. Great expectations. My consciousness goes before me to announce my coming. When I live with a mindset, mindfully, that I'm not just a victim of life, I'm participating in the gift, and every day is a gift. Let's talk about mindfulness just for a minute. What is mindfulness? And you know, if you've read any of my books, you've heard any of my talks, I talk a lot about mindfulness. It's kind of like a one-note samba. That's all I talk about is mindfulness. It's at the core of my teachings. Why? Because being present in the moment is where life is. There's no such thing as being present yesterday, because that was then and this is now. And nobody knows you're going to be here tomorrow. Not one person in this room knows for sure you're going to wake up tomorrow morning. I don't mean to be the Grim Reaper here, to cause bad vibes. But think about it. The gift of this moment has been plopped in your lap. What are you doing with it? Are you whiling it away by focusing on what might or might not happen tomorrow? Oh my God, what's going on with elections and all that stuff? Well, it's good to be aware and mindful of those things, okay? But how much power are we giving away to allow those things to distract and pull us off the present moment, which is where the gift is waiting for us, okay? So mindfulness is being able to be fully present in the moment. I've said this in the past when I've been here before. You notice your body is always in the present moment, yeah? It can't be any other place. But where is your mind a lot of the time? It's either in the past or the future, right? What's going on with your perception of life when your mind is in the past or the future? Worry, fear, what you see is what you... Yeah. So, by the way, there's a difference between mindfulness and awareness. I love the acronym. My dear friend Tom Costa gave this to me 35 years ago. ABC. Okay. Awareness builds consciousness. Mindfulness is your ability to be present in the moment. Mindfulness comes from the Aramaic or the Sanskrit word smriti. What it means is remember to remember. Come back to the present moment. Awareness is what you focus on in the present moment. Do you see how they couple together? Being mindful in the moment is just to be, okay, I'm here, but awareness is what you're looking at, what you're seeing, how you're engaging life in the present moment, and they work together. So the idea of the metaphor of the spiritual journey up the mountain. The mountain is metaphorically consciousness, and the higher you go in consciousness, the closer you get to the awareness of your oneness with God. Yeah? Pretty simple, isn't it? But that's not a journey you can take once a month and stay connected. It's not a journey you can even take once a week and stay connected. It's a journey we have to learn to take every day, and frankly, every moment of every day. That's called mindful living. And when we get to that point, I'm going to share one more writing out of this book. I wrote this is a poem that I wrote back in 1985 when my daughter was born. Somehow it made it into this book. I quote Dr. Ernest Holmes. Spirituality is natural goodness. God is not a person. God is a presence personified in us. Spirituality is not a thing. It is the atmosphere of God's presence, goodness, truth, and beauty. And this is the poem I wrote to support that. A mother views her child through the eyes of love. A scientist views the stars in the heavens above. A doctor views his patient with compassion and concern. A student views his teacher with so much to learn. A grandma views her grandchild and makes such a fuss, while God views itself through the eyes of each of us. Everywhere I look, I see the face of God. How will you view your life today? Most of us are so deeply rooted in the world of work, people, conditions, places, and things that we seldom think of taking time to step back and see our lives through the eyes of God. There's the journey up the mountain. And it's a journey that we can take. You got practitioners here, right? Sometimes you need a guide to take you by the hand and get you up that mountain, that hill. That's okay, you know. There's all kinds of tools and support around you that help you get on the spiritual journey and stay on it. But at the end of the day, it's an inside job. It's an inside job. Everywhere I look, I see the face of God. And the only way that I can have that realization if I realize I'm looking through the eyes of God. God in me, as me, is me. That's pure science of mind, by the way. That's really about all I have to say about this morning, other than to say the greatest miracle of all, beyond the gift of life that has been given to you, and how you use it honors the giver of the gift. The greatest miracle of all is self-awareness. To be aware that you're aware, and to be aware that when you're not on the path, bring yourself back. Yeah, I love the saying, if you're not as close to God as you used to be, who moved? Take a nice deep breath. So when you leave here today, really realize you're stepping into the miracle, the gift of what's next. Life given to you with the free choice and ability to co-create what it'll look like. If you don't like what you see and you can't change it, change how you see it. God is, I am. It's really that simple. And it's also that difficult. That's why it's a journey of a lifetime. A lifetime. I've been studying science of mind for 40 years. I've been a minister for 35 years. And I think I'm just now starting to get it. Thank you for letting me be here this morning with you to share these ideas and to sing as well. Come on, Brother Bob, we've got more to do. Thank you.